All right, so here is the Film Buff podcast number 2, where we are going to talk about new horror movies.
Yes, from the 2020s to, 2020 to 2023, so 3 years worth.
So, I watched about a dozen or so, maybe not a dozen. I watched The Innocents, which was a foreign one, which I thought was pretty good. I'll talk about it more, but I'll just list the ones that I did watch. I watched the new Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and I watched Pearl, I watched X, and I watched The Pale Blue Eye, and I watched Last Night in Soho, and I watched I watched about 3/4 of Speak No Evil.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And I think that's all I watched. So I guess I watched, about a dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you watch?
I watched one that I heard about, which was a independent film, and it's made in Canada. It's called Skinamarink, but it's got so many mixed opinions. So a lot of people hate it, a lot of people love it. It's very quiet, and it's probably the one that I liked the most. I watched Pearl, like you, The Menu, Lamb.
Can I borrow that pen for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
You.
I started Speak No Evil. I started The Night House. I started The Black Phone. The Hunt I watched, and I watched the trailer for Cronenberg's new one, Crimes of the Future. So that was my list of what I looked at.
Okay. I left a couple out. I also watched Smile.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched, I think it's called An Injured Fawn, which was a Shudder. I have a Shudder account,
Yep.
so it was a Shudder original.
Yep.
So I think as an overview, I think that we have similar opinions on the new horror films in that the lighting is and the filters they put on afterward are. They try to set up the spooky vibe by sucking the saturation out and post production, and then the lighting that will have rooms that are normally brightly lit, dimly lit. Another one I tried to watch was Antlers.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. And I couldn't get very much through it because in I think it's the second scene, it takes place in a bathroom and a public washroom, and public washrooms are brightly lit, right?
Yes.
With not neon lights, fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
And then the scene after that was in a classroom, and they were both dimly lit. In a classroom, obviously, it's brightly lit. Again, fluorescent lights. Kids have to be able to read and write. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to set up this spooky vibe, but it's like the writing should do that. Maybe the scoring, but first and foremost, obviously the writing should do it. So if they're trying to do it with the lighting, for me, it just yanks me out of the going along with the story and the believability of it.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of both on the same page in that aspect of this commonality in newer horror films.
Yeah, and it's weird that people, because if you look at films like The Exorcist, it's not that dark, and the first 2/3 of that film don't take place in the bedroom where it is dark, but it's in a bright daytime of Iraq, I think it is, and then the second part is all in that sterile hospital environment, but it's very, very unnerving. So I don't know why filmmakers still feel like they've, you can still have different types of lighting, whether it's in the forest during the day. But it's about building tension with plot and with characters, I think, more than just flicking some lights on and off, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say it's lazy because it's it's intentional. They're doing something. They're trying to be artistic, but I think that I guess it's trying to make up for having really good performers. I think Ellen Bernstein is one of the greatest performers ever.
Yes.
With other roles such as Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yep, that's right.
And she was also really good in Requiem for a Dream.
That's right. She was amazing in that.
Yeah. So I don't know, but there is like some good performances too. Like I thought that the woman who plays the psychic in The Conjuring, like, and she's also in Bates Motel, I believe. She's pretty good. Like she's not Ellen Bernstein, but yeah, it's just the lighting is, I don't know, just too forced to put on, right? It's like, do we like, and also what it does is that it doesn't allow those scary moments to stand out. It's like if everything is just painted with this like blah kind of like look, then it just doesn't make the scary moments as pronounced.
For sure. Yeah, and I think I was just thinking of Rain when you're saying that, like Rain, in a horror movie. It's just, there's a lot of tropes with horror movies, and I think that's why we both kind of agree that they haven't really expanded and explored further than, I think the last time I saw a really good horror movie was probably in the mid 2000s. Like one I could say is, pardon me?
It Follows?
No, probably I'd say that's up there, but just in general, I think like the horror genre is like totally lost what it means to create a scary film. Like that simple, right?
Just a slight amendment on that. I think mostly lost, not totally.
Yeah,
lost.
No, for sure,
like,
for
yeah,
sure.
I know that because you were just mentioning that there was some that you.
Well, there's lots that get so close. Like
Yeah,
we have films like, and you said you really liked Pearl.
Yeah.
Right, so
another thing, just to hop into for a second, something you mentioned before we started recording is defining the genre.
That's right.
Defining the genre,
sure.
right?
Big part.
And we didn't even really discuss that. You mentioned that would be something interesting to discuss.
Yeah.
And a lot of these movies, and Pearl is kind of one of them, where it's more of a drama. Oh yeah, spoiler alert. We're definitely going to talk about details of films that will kind of ruin your enjoyment if you listen to this or watch this first. Yeah. So, well, I'll talk about another movie which I really didn't like, was The Pale Blue Eye with Christian Bale. Love Christian Bale. I think he is one of the greatest performers alive today. And it was basically a murder mystery. And I mean, it's IMDb who called it a horror. And you know what? I believe it's in the horror section of Netflix. It's a Netflix movie.
Yep.
So I thought it was just a murder mystery. Like, I guess there's witchcraft and devil worshiping kind of stuff in it, but I don't know. I guess that's what it is. I guess that's like the content of like, is like the devil involved? Is there like a serial killer involved? Is there like a monster? Well, I guess monster can sometimes be like sci-fi, but I guess, yeah, it's supernatural and lots of people die. I don't know. What do you think? This is just horror genre means.
I would say somebody usually dies. There's movies that have a kill count of one person. Like The Exorcist. I think The Exorcist has like one or two kills.
Two, I think. Yeah.
Only one's on camera. So
yeah.
And then music as well. Like what constitutes? Because I know a lot of like creepy films. The Killing of a Sacred Deer was like creepy as hell to me. It felt very close to a horror film, but I think a lot of people wouldn't consider it a horror film. So I guess it's subjective for the most part. So for me, a horror film, I guess, would be definitely supernatural, and probably someone dying, and just an overall like the way the structure is like built of the story, like the way the structure is built. If it's more man versus unknown, I'm feeling it's more of a horror. If it's more man versus man, you have like a movie like I don't know, Changing Lanes or something, where it's two business guys who got this thing going with each other. They're trying to kill each other or whatever. It doesn't feel like a horror movie. It feels more like a thriller sort of script story plots.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
no, I think there's like some like overlap between like a psychological thriller and horror. Like Henry, remember Henry? He's like the serial killer guy.
Yes.
I think it's like an 80s movie.
I remember that one.
It's kind of horror-esque, but there's like this family drama going on. He's living with like a brother and sister.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously like Black Christmas. That's another one that kind of straddles that line of horror and psychological thriller and mystery. You're trying to figure out who the guy is. But yeah, so I guess it's kind of like horror is like a broad field of genre where there's overlap between other things, right?
Well, for sure. And I think with Korean cinema too, or foreign cinema, I guess foreign cinema with horror films, especially Korean, has taken it to a different place where I haven't watched a lot, but they're very well-known, respected films like The Lady Vengeance or Snowblood. I can't remember some of these really great films. But there's a lot of drama in the horror. So you really get to, there's like sadness in it. So like in Korea or South Korea, it seems like they really tried to put a human drama, sadness aspect into their horror films, which is kind of different than us. Because we'll just have teenagers go to a park and get slaughtered. It's nothing sad. They're having a great time until they get killed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little more like deep and layered than like an average like slasher flick is. I think that they do some.
I enjoy the most for these new horror films is uniqueness and originality. So Skinamarink, like pretty original vibe, very like almost zero talking, very quiet, very darkly lit, very slow. Not the greatest horror film I've ever seen, but different than these formulaic films that we're seeing, because we're seeing sequels, we're seeing remakes. So there's number one, they're sticking to the formula, but they're already doing the plots and the characters we've already seen 20 years ago, which we've probably done better with animatronics and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I think the one I value the most, I thought that Lamb was original.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, quiet, original, different, and I didn't really like Pearl, but I gotta say for sure it's got its own personality to it. It's got its own vibe, and it wears it like really well. And I think a lot of people will love that film because there is a lot to like about that film. And then The Hunt, again, like it's a great kind of fresh concept of these rich guys in the plane in the beginning. They're going to go hunt these people on this island, and they're just these rich guys in a plane. But it's just the acting immediately just is almost just, I have to turn these movies off because I don't know how I'm going to sit through an hour and a half when I can't sit through the first 5 minutes of it.
Yeah.
It's so cliche. It's so full of tropes, and they're not real people with real personalities. They're just like these caricatures. So
yeah, and the acting a lot of the time is like they're not really like selling it to me.
Yeah.
And some other people who probably don't watch as many movies as us or don't watch them in the same critical kind of way and maybe with the same enjoyment. Like some people, movies is more of like a peripheral kind of thing in their life, whereas with us it's like a focal point.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of these actors, I thought Frozen was really good. I thought Frozen, I don't know if you ever saw that when they're stuck on the chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Good.
I thought their performances were pretty good too, but when it's bad, like what I keep thinking about is like this sounds like a table read, like like the first time they read the script, or they're just reading it off of like the script's like right in front of them, or they're reading like cue cards or something. But yeah, Pearl, Mia Goth, she had a hand in writing it. I thought man, like honestly, like that's like one of the greatest performances of new performances I've seen, and just greatest performances like ever. And I know we don't see eye to eye on it, and it just it goes to show that despite us both really liking movies a lot, we have different experiences throughout our life, and subsequently we read things a little like different, right?
Yeah.
And I thought I love the movie, and I honestly like thought it was like one of like the best movies I've seen in a long time. As far as rewatchability, I think it's there for me because I really enjoyed her performance a lot.
Yeah.
And the character is like kind of, I felt ambivalent about the character. Like, you know, she tries to kill her dad, and she kills the goose, and she's a sadist and a sociopath. But I also felt for the character, feeling trapped on the farm, and how her life is already like written for her, and she's being exposed to this new media via like magazines, pamphlets, and posters, and realizing that there's like a bigger world out there, and she could be appreciated more outside of the world. And I don't know, that scene where her sister-in-law is telling her to suggesting that she talk to her as though the sister-in-law was her brother, and then she just goes on, and it's all in one take too. I believe it's just about one take. Speaking to her like from the heart, and how she like hates the husband and shit, and it was I was super sold on it, and I love like how colorful it was, and I love how it's not like chopping every 2 seconds like a lot of these horror films. It's like when the camera shoulder mount, fine, no problem. Like it's a great technique. It was used in Rescue Dawn. But when they have a shot that's just stable, there's just framing someone, whether it's like a close up or a medium shot, and they have someone holding a camera on the shoulder, you get the inevitable shakiness. It's like, put it on a tripod, put it on, have a steady cam, like something. It's just like shakiness. It just screams, we're filming a movie, like someone is holding a camera. So it just takes me out of like the enjoyment of watching it.
Yeah, there's definitely particular parts to use a tripod and Steadicam. Steadicam's been used so much since Blair Witch. And to me, but I realized when you're talking also is like, I think part of the reason I wasn't a big fan of the movie is because I like claustrophobia and closed quarters in horror movies.
Yeah.
And even a movie like, and we'll go back to Exorcist, where it's very open, but it's slowly, you get the Iraq, and then you go to a smaller enclosure, which is the hospital, which does feel claustrophobic because she's stuck there. They're trying to, and then it goes to the bedroom pretty much for most of the movie. So claustrophobia is something I really like. And you mentioned jump scares as well.
Oh my God.
Which, if you remember from the first Halloween, there's what some people might call the original jump scares, where like the camera's behind you, and then I put my hand on your shoulder, and so the hand comes into this sort of close-up shot, frame on your shoulder, but there's no music cue that goes, like there's no sound effect that comes in to be like, it's just like the way he shot it, with the lights he shot it, the where he put the shoulder in the hand. So like jump scares, and just big open films, to me, it's like it doesn't really feel horror-ish. I like claustrophobia in horror films, I think.
A film that does have that claustrophobic-esque feel to it, I think it's called Injured Fawn, the one on Shudder. And it basically takes place in a a secluded cabin. It's a nice cabin. It's not like a Evil Dead kind of cabin. It's like a really nice, expensive cabin out in the woods. And it's a guy's about to, like, he's a serial killer, and he has this chick there. And I wasn't able to finish it because the first 2 acts were phenomenal, acting phenomenal. I thought the writing was great, and cinematography great. But when when the antagonist is getting his comeuppance, it was just so like drawn out, and like that was like the entire third act of the movie, opposed to like having an abrupt end, like in Cape Fear, which kind of is a horror, it's a psychological thriller for sure. It's fairly quick, Max Cady dying,
Yes.
So like it does take, it's the last scene for sure. But it builds up to it, it's the suspense of him coming after them, like it builds up to him dying. It's not just like him like getting tortured for a long time. That's another reason I don't really like Hellraiser, and why I didn't like the 2013 Evil Dead. I just like, I don't know, gore is not my thing. Like I get it, like, it looks realistic sometimes or whatever. And I hate the Saw movies. Like I almost watched the new Saw with Chris Rock yesterday, whatever it's called, and it's just grotesque to me. And I'm not a huge fan of Cronenberg either. Like I like suspense, and I think the grotesque and macabre stuff is it's not great filmmaking, honestly. Like it's artistic. It's 100%.
Yeah.
It's artistic, and there's effort that goes into it.
Yeah.
But it's not it's not storytelling. You know.
No, and I think you said it peripheral. Like if I'm on my phone the whole time, put that in the background. It's like looking over at a painting once in a while or something. But if I'm reading a novel, reading a book, I have to pay attention. It's sort of like a film. There's a narrative going on where if you miss something, it's objective. They're trying to tell you a story and make a point. And another thing, I don't know how long we're going to go here, but dread is different like than tension. Like dread, like The Shining, like you already know when the movie starts, like he's fucked up and he's got this like history of he's a fresh off the wagon or on the wagon, off the wagon. And so there's just dread throughout that whole film. And at the end, like you're saying, it doesn't have to be this whole like, oh, I've got the revenge and all that stuff. But I think I want to have dread throughout. Even when the movie finishes, I want to be feeling dread still, or some unknown, like some mystery there, where I don't know what exactly happened in that movie. And that's where like Blair Witch and like, Paranormal Activity, some of those films that did really well, came and did some stuff with the genre, but because you leave the movie and you don't get all the answers tied up in a bow. And I think horror, the scariest thing is we fear what we don't know. So at the end of the movie, I don't want to have it all tied up in a horror movie. I want to be going like, who's the demon, whose body is that demon in at the end of Exorcist sort of stuff.
Yeah, sometimes like it's done very cheaply, so to speak. For example, I think it's the end of Jason Goes to Hell. Freddy's glove comes up and pulls his mask down. So maybe not that, but other ones. Well, Black Christmas, obviously, right?
Yes.
Was he caught or not?
Absolutely.
Well, I guess they kind of indicates that he wasn't caught at the end of it. And that is super fun. And I think that's a great way to end a movie is it kind of setting it up for a sequel. And I think that's a lot of times what they are trying to do. But in other cases, it leaves you leaving the movie theater or leaving your couch or going to sleep with that feeling of like, oh man, like it's
some people can't stand that though. Like they will hate the movie. Will be a great movie, but because they didn't get wrapped up perfectly at the ending, they throw the whole movie away, which is weird.
Yeah. What was the other one? Oh yeah, Smile. Hated the third act. Like I thought the first two acts were great, acting good, cinematography good, story good, and then relative to what you're saying, it did finalize in the end. And the same thing with It as well. You know, it's like this mysterious clown, right? But then like it being like a monster just kind of sucked away.
Why would they do that?
Oh, it's an alien. Like, like they should have left it open-ended. Yeah. And Smile was the same way. It ended up being like a monster and they're portraying it with CGI. And it's just like, you had this like great, like suspenseful movie where, and I remember someone was saying that about Star Wars too, how they explained the Force away with midi-chlorians I think it was episode 1, where before it was like this ethereal, mysterious, ubiquitous thing, this mystery, and then just solving it like that in such a corny way, and with especially with It and Smile in such a predictable, corny, not creative way is disappointing. Leaves you not wanting to watch the movie again and just disappointed and not having that feeling of dread. For sure. I think a lot of them are being written to have like the big reveal at the end. So, like I was watching The Secret Window, and which is a good film. It's a great writer, David Coep, Johnny Depp, John Turturro. It's a great film, but again, it's at the end, you find out that it was all in his head and all that. So it's such a shame that they feel like, well, the end of the movie has to be the big reveal people have been waiting for. But I'd say Skinamarink and that's probably the only one I'm willing to put too high on. I gotta try watching that one. What about Lamb? You know what? I'll put Lamb on that too. That's worth a watch. Okay, I gotta watch that one too. And then Speak No Evil. You started it? Or? I started it. Yeah, it just didn't appeal to me. I don't know. The characters, like I couldn't like get into it. It was just like so wishy-washy. People are just talking like, oh yeah, let's have drinks and stuff. And there is like more. What's the word? Higher stakes as the movie progressed, and some like intrigue and mystery. Yeah. But some of the choices, like spoiler alert, when he turns the car back around to these like severely like weird like people that they're not enjoying the company of, and they're staying at their cabin. And he turns around because they've like left in the middle of the night because the wife's like, oh, we got to get out of here. These people are super weird. And they go back to retrieve the kids like teddy bear or whatever. Yeah. I was like, no way. They would have just bought the kid another teddy bear. Like,
yeah.
So it was unbelievable.
Well, I guess that concludes podcast number 2. Please subscribe to the channel, guys. Thanks.